everyone, it's Angela from Cake Angel and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how easy it is to make professional looking videos using Davinci Resolve. Now this is the software that I use on my desktop computer to create all my videos for social media, whether that's for Facebook, Instagram or even here on YouTube. So let's dive in and take a look. Okay, so we're going to be using Davinci Resolve for this today, and I'm going to show you how easy it is to put your videos together so you can upload them to sites like Instagram or YouTube or Facebook just to promote your cookie decorating. So first thing we're going to do is open the application, which is here, and remember this is free software so you don't need to pay a subscription for it. There are additional features that you can pay for, but I've been using this for almost a year and I've never needed to do that. So it takes a while to open because it is quite a heavy software on your system in terms of space. But let's have a look at it once we get to the first screen. Okay, so this is the screen that you're met with when you open Davinci. It'll show any previous projects that you've made, and what you'll need to do is start with an untitled project as it shows here. You can either double click that or you can click New Project. So let's double click, and then this takes you straight into the workspace. So what I always do first of all is you want to toggle down the bottom. These are all the different features that you have. There's one for editing music, there's one for color. I tend to use this one, which is the editing screen, so let's click on that one. And the first thing we're going to do is grab some media to go into it. So I'm just going to change the size of this so I can pull up another screen. And I have one set up ready that's got my cookie video in that I want to edit. And what we're going to do is actually put these three videos into one, and we're going to add a watermark to it that I've made in different software, and also add some royalty-free music to it as well. So the easiest way to do this is to grab your first video. I'm just going to click with the mouse, keep my finger down, and then grab it and slide it into here. And this will always pop up. I always say change to change the frame rate, which is perfect. And then there's a little bar over here that you can use that will actually zoom in or out on your project. So we're just going to change this down. You can either click the minus or you can actually slide this back and forth and see how that actually changes just the view that you see. So this is the full length of the video. And you can see that it's got the video track and the audio track as well. We're actually going to get rid of that audio track, but the next thing we're going to do first is add in the rest of our content. So now I'm going to take my second video and we're going to do the same thing, and you just want to click it, keep that finger down and then place it next to it, and it will snap into place. You see how it kind of pushes it there? There's actually a little magnet tool here that is helping it do that for us. So you could turn it off as you get more used to using Davinci, but I find it's really handy because it'll actually put things into the right place for you. Another thing I'll point out before we close my folder here is that you'll see that your items start appearing up here in Davinci as well. But let's get the rest of our files in. So we're going to take our third one and do the same thing. And we're just going to zoom out a little bit so we can see all three together. So this would be our full video. Next thing we're going to do is add in our watermark. So if you have something like a PNG or a JPEG that you've made for your logo, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to grab it, keep your finger down on the mouse and slide it into place. Now obviously this is going to be much smaller. You can see it's barely visible on our timeline. So then you're going to press your plus key or even use the dot, and you're just going to increase it so that you can see the actual size of it. And then what we're going to do is actually change the size of it so it fits the whole of our video. Easiest way to do this is to start to drag it across, and I'm just clicking and dragging with my mouse so that you can see a little bit more of your video. Reposition the cursor and just keep going until you get to the end. So that's that done. Now in our preview screen you can see that my logo is actually the full size of the video. We don't want it to be that big. So before we change the size of it, we're going to do one more thing. We're just going to grab our music file, and I'm using one from Bensound, which is a royalty-free website. I'll pop the link in the description for this so you can take a look on there and choose. There's all sorts of music, and it's free as well, so there's no issues with you using this and it being flagged as copyright. So I'm just going to grab that file, click and hold, and drag it into the timeline. Now you can see straight away that this is actually shorter than my video, but what we are going to do is edit this video a little bit, because there's some areas where I know that I let my camera run when I wasn't actually demonstrating. So we're going to cut those out, just make all our adjustments, and then we can play around with the sizing. So next thing I'm going to do is actually close this, and we can make Davinci full screen so that you can see everything a little better. Okay, so we've got everything in our timeline. We are ready to go. Now the next thing I'm going to do before I start my editing is actually name my file. You can see up here currently it's got untitled project. So we're just going to go up the top to file. We're going to go to save project as, and then you can name it whatever you like. So I'm just going to call mine Cake Angel Cookie Cake, as that's what we're editing today, and then just click save. And this will change at the top as well. Perfect. Okay, so let's jump into editing our watermark first before we start cutting up the video. Again, you can see that it's too big. It's actually taking up the full screen. We want to resize that. And there's a really easy way to do this. Over on this side of the screen, you can see this little icon here. We're going to click that. You want to make sure that your watermark is highlighted first. So just to show you, anything that I click on will have a red border around it. That means that item is actually selected. Anything that I do will apply to this piece of my video. So let's click back on our watermark. We're going to click this icon, and you'll see that a border has now appeared around my watermark. And it's as simple as when you're editing anything in Word or PowerPoint or other softwares, you can just click one of the corners and then actually drag it to resize it that way. So let's just go ahead and do that. I'm just holding my mouse button down and I'm changing the size. Another way that you can also do that is we have a little menu up here called Inspector. If you click on that, we have all different items here that we can use for our size. So there's zoom, there's position, we'll change where it is on the page, but I actually like to do it freehand using my mouse. So again, now to move it, as I don't want it in the middle of my video, I'm going to click inside of that box. So just here by the A, I'm going to press my mouse, keep my button down, and then I can drag it, and I can put this anywhere on the video now at this stage. So I think I'm just going to pop it here in the corner. Now something else that I like to do, just because I have a black logo here, it's actually a little bit too dark for my video, so I'm going to change the opacity of it just so that it kind of melds into the background a little bit better. So to do that, I'm going to go up to here again in the inspector, and you can see it's right up the top. It's currently on 100%. I'm just going to use this little slider, and if you watch here while I change the slider, you'll see that it'll actually get a little fainter. So you can see how that's fading out. If I go to 0, obviously you won't see it at all. I'm just going to put this about 50%. You can also type into the box as well if you have a particular number that you always use. So let's do 50 and press enter. Now occasionally Davinci is going to make that loud noise at you. Every so often it auto saves, and I have it set to that so that I don't actually lose any of my editing. If for some reason my computer decided to have a meltdown and just froze a little bit, I want to make sure that I don't lose anything I've been working on. So you can have it set to auto save, or you can even just go back up to the top here to File and then Save Project, and that will just quickly save it for you. Okay, so we've got our watermark done. The next thing we're going to do now is actually work on our videos. So I'm going to highlight my first one, so that's turned red, and this little red bar that you have here, this is actually where it is in the video when it's playing. So if I press play here, you'll see this will start to move. So let's do that. It's going to play all the sounds as well, so just give you an idea of what this sounds like at this stage of editing. So you can see that bar was moving, and also you could see that my video zooms in and out right at the beginning, so we know we're going to have to clean up this video a little bit. What I am going to do for now whilst I'm working on it though is turn all of my sounds off, because it's quite distracting when you're working to have your sound playing all the time. You can always leave it on if you want to. I'm actually going to delete the audio track that was recorded when I recorded this video, so that's just the background noise from my kitchen when I was working, and I'm going to right click just here in this area for audio track 1, and I'm going to delete track. Let's do that again because it just decided to do a quick autosave. So right click and delete track. And there you go, it's disappeared. Now if you change your mind, you want to undo that, you can either do Control and Z, which brings it right back, or you can go up to your edit menu at the top, and there's also all your undo and redo history here as well. So let's just go back and do that again because we definitely don't want this track there. Perfect. Now we're going to start actually editing the video itself. So I know if I move this through my timeline, it just gives you a quick sort of sped up version of what you've recorded. So I know that we're going to need to start editing the first part of the video because there's a bit of a gap before I actually start demonstrating. So you just want to kind of hover along until you see an area that you're happy with. So I'm going to start it about here, and then we have the blade edit mode tool here, and you'll see that it always gives you a little description of what each tool is if you hover over it. I'm just going to click that. That turns red, so I know that that's the active tool that I'm using, and then I go back down to my timeline and I just click. So now if I move this, my cursor, and drag it, you can see that it's actually made a cut here. So then we're going to change this back to the arrow selection tool. I can right click and delete. Now we've got a little bit of a gap there. The easiest way to get rid of that is to just hover over everything that's remaining in that video with your button pressed. Highlight all of it so that it selects all of those items, and then you can just drag them back to the start. There are also shortcuts to do this as well, but I wanted to show you the long way so that you can get used to that before you start getting more familiar with the shortcuts. We'll cover that in some later videos. Okay, so now we've got the first part of our video done. I'm just going to go back to the start. I'm going to mute the sound here, so I'm just going to press the M for mute, and I'm just going to let it start to play. And now we're just looking for any areas where we want to cut again. So you could see that I just slightly moved the plate. So I'm still going to want to trim the start of the video a little bit. And to do that, I'm just actually going to zoom in a little bit. So remember, we've always got this slider bar here. I'm just going to click it a couple of times so that I get a better look at the timeline. So let's go back. We're going to go to here, we're going to use our blade tool, we're going to cut, we're going to select it, right click and delete. Okay, so now I'm going to zoom out slightly. I'm going to select these three again and just nudge it back to the start. And let's have a look at that. Okay, so now it's going ahead and I'm just going to scroll through it again. I'm actually going to change the speed of this video because I want it to be a little bit more sped up so it's more interesting for the viewers to watch. And just remember, anytime that you're creating these videos, you don't want them necessarily to be real time unless you have lots of audio over the top. But because this is going to just be a music decorating video, like a reel or a short, I just want to keep it relatively fast. So now we're just going through again, we're just watching it to see if there's anything else that we need to edit out before we speed everything up. This looks fine so far. And there's a little bit of a cut that we need to make there, so I'm just going to stop it. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And we're going to make a cut right about here. So you want to make sure that the only thing you highlight is the item that you want to delete. Highlight it by clicking on it, then right click, delete selected. And then I'm just going to drag that into position. So now we can see that we've got it lined up really nicely. I'm going to zoom out slightly. We have a little gap here because we just deleted that a little bit, but we can tidy that up in a moment. And let's have a look at our next one. So let's just drag that across and let's hit play. Okay, so it looks like we've got a little bit of a pause here in between recording. I'm just going to put my cursor there. I'm going to use my blade slice, change it back to my cursor, and then right click and delete. Now in a later video I'll show you how to use ripple delete as well, but again I want to show you just the very basics for this so you can get used to those features before we start adding more complicated methods to our editing. Okay, so we've got our last one here. Let's see if we need to edit anything from this one. Looks like it's okay and there's no more edits that we need to do, so that's great. So the next thing we're going to do now is go ahead and actually change the speed of it. So the first thing I'm going to do is just point out to you how you can tell how long your video is at this stage. And the easiest way is you'll see you've got your timestamps here. So this video is, at this point we're at 4 minutes and 47 seconds. If you move the cursor to the end, this is the time of your video. So it's at 5 minutes and 4 seconds. So that's quite long. We want to try and get this to about 30 seconds so that it can be a short on or a reel on social media. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to play around with the speed of our videos. So let's just press stop. I'm going to go back to the start. I'm going to start with the first one. It always makes sense to start from the start. So you right click on the video, change clip speed, and then here you can see it's currently set at 100%. So 100% is where you would expect it to be at this stage because we haven't done anything to it. I'm going to change it to, let's say, 500%, and I'm also going to click this one here, ripple sequence. And you can see what happens when I do this. So let's click change. So do you see how it moved everything else on that track? So it changed the speed of this one and it also moved these to the same position rather than leaving a gap. Let me undo it and I'll show you what happens if you don't do ripple delete. We're going to untick that. We're going to change this to 500 and then change. So it just leaves the gap there like it did before when we were editing, and at this stage then you would just grab them and you would move them into position. Next thing I want to do though is just have a look and see whether that's too fast for us and also how long that segment is. I'm just going to move this to the end and it says that it's 18 seconds. So that sounds about good to me. Let's play it though and see what it looks like. So whenever you're doing time-lapse videos, you want to make sure that it's not so fast that it actually loses the value of the content for the watcher. Because if it's too fast, they won't be able to get a good sense of what you're actually doing in the video. This looks pretty good though, so I think we'll leave it at 500%. So let's pause it. I'm going to go ahead now and do that for the second one. So again, we're doing 500. We're going to do ripple sequence. And then I'm just going to move this across. So that's now at 32 seconds. And let's do the third one. Let's do 500. And we'll drag this one. And let's have a look. So in total, our video is 1 minute and 9 seconds, which is fine. As I said, if you wanted to do it to fit the requirements for reels, then it would need to be up to 30 seconds. If you're doing this for a YouTube short, then it has to be 1 minute. So you would want to make sure that you speed it up just a little bit more to fit that requirement. Obviously for Reels on Instagram, it would need to be much faster again. But for the purpose of this video, I just wanted to show you the basics of how to do that. So we've got 2 more things we need to do before we can actually render our video. So let's do that next. The first thing I'm going to do is change our watermark, because now you can see that it's much longer than the length of our video. So you just grab the far right side of it and drag it, and it will snap into place. We're going to do the same with our audio. So you just want to grab it, keeping the finger down on the mouse, and then drag it all the way to match the line. And that will make our video and music and our watermark all line up so they're all for the right duration. Let's just play it and see what that looks like, but we're going to turn our sound on first as well. Okay, let's take a look. Now you can see there, as it transitioned from the first segment to the second one, we actually left a little bit of a gap by mistake, and you can just see it here. Now an easy way to stop that from happening is to make sure you're zoomed in a little bit more on your timeline when you're pushing your videos together. So I'm just going to go up here. I've zoomed in, I'm going to highlight these 2, and I'm just going to make sure it butts up to the previous video. And obviously I need to just amend my watermark and my music to align with that, and then we're good to go. So we'll carry on checking this now. Now I've just turned the volume down on this just to explain that sometimes it is quite laggy on your computer and you may get a little bit of distortion in your audio, but it always resolves that when you render your video. And it's just sometimes if you have something else running in the background of your computer, you don't need to worry about it. I always play my videos once they're rendered just to double check nothing like that has actually happened in the process. So let's have a look now because it's almost finished. Perfect. So that's our video done as far as editing goes. The last thing that we need to do now is render it so that it'll actually turn it into a video file that we can use on social media. So I'm going to go across to the Rocket tab, which is the Deliver tab. And you'll see that it gives you a whole different screen now. So let's just quickly go through what everything means here and what we actually need to be concerned with. So the main things that we need to look at are up here on the left for the render settings. And when you look here, you'll see there's no file name, there's no location of where it's going to save this file for you. So you want to make sure you pick somewhere where you're going to be able to find that file easily. And then as we scroll down, we need to check a couple of other things. So you need to make sure that export video is ticked. It always should be by default, but always just give it a quick glance, make sure it is ticked. Click on your audio as well and make sure that it's ticked here. I never actually change any of my audio settings, but I do always play around with my video settings. So let's go back to that. Now the default here always goes to this MXF. We want to change it to MP4 so that it's compatible with social media. So you just want to click on that down arrow, select MP4. The codec I always leave the same. My resolution, this is the correct resolution that I would want for Facebook and for IGTV and also YouTube. If you were making a reel, we would want a different resolution, and I'm going to cover that in a different video. But for now, we're going to leave it the same. Our frame rate we can keep the same, and we just scroll down and check everything else. Everything else looks good, so that's perfect. So let's go back up. We're going to decide what to name this. So this is the file name that it'll actually show as on the back end of YouTube or Facebook and Instagram. So again, I'm just going to name it Cake Angel Cookie Cake. And the location, I'm going to browse and find the right spot for it. So choose wherever you want for this. That's completely up to you where you change them. I have a folder here called Cookie Cake because I like to keep each of my videos in their own folder. So I'm just going to pop it in there and just double check that it does say MP4 here. If for any reason you hadn't changed that, as I showed you earlier, then you can just click cancel, scroll back down again to the format here, and then make sure it says MP4, and we can go back up and save it. So again, I'm going to go to browse. I'm going to select my folder. And then once it's in the right place, I'm going to click save. And now we're ready to render. And this can take quite a while depending on the size of your video. Our video is relatively small, so it shouldn't take too long. But I'm going to click add to render queue. And then you'll see it pops up here on our right hand side. And you can actually go and create other videos and render them all at the same time, or I prefer to generally just do one at a time, just the video that I'm working on in that moment. So once it's here, you just simply click on start render and then let it work its magic. And what it will do, it'll basically work through the timeline, rendering everything with the settings that we chose. So what it will do here now is work through the timeline and convert everything with the settings that we chose. It does give you an idea of how long it's going to take to do that, so we're just going to wait for that to happen, and then I'll show you what to do next. Okay, so there we go. Our video has finished rendering. It says at the top that it was completed in just over 1 minute, which is great. So now what you can do, you can close Davinci if you know that you're finished with this one. I'm just going to minimize it though, and we're going to go back to that folder where we asked it to save the file. And you can see here that this is the file that we made, cakeangelcookiecake.mp4. And if you double click it, you can just play it through and make sure that everything's gone through correctly. So I hope you found that video tutorial very useful. Don't forget to leave a comment below if you have any questions on anything that we've covered, and I'd be happy to help elevate your videos to the next level for social media. And also consider subscribing to my channel. I'm going to be uploading more of these kind of videos over the next few weeks, and I'd love to have your support and also hear your feedback as well. Until next time, thanks for watching.